Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Victory, staring at the causality engine. She had been studying it for 2 days straight, barely sleeping, trying to understand how something so vast and terrible could exist. Around her, holographic displays showed data streaming from 47 ships as they orbited the White Hole Nexus at a safe distance. Safe was a relative term here. This close to the engine, time did things that made the temporal shear look normal. Sarah could see her reflection in the window, but sometimes it was her reflection from yesterday or tomorrow or 10 years ago. The ship existed in multiple moments at once, and only human consciousness could sort through the chaos. "We're running out of time," Webb said, joining her at the window. He looked exhausted. They all did. 24 hours until activation. "I know," Sarah said. She pulled up a holographic model of the engine. "I've been analyzing its structure. It's not just a weapon, Marcus. It's a paradox made physical. When it activates, it will create a causality loop that expands across the entire universe. Every moment will connect to every other moment. Time becomes a circle instead of a line. Can we destroy it? No. We don't have weapons powerful enough, and even if we did, destroying it might trigger the same effect. The engine is stable right now. Breaking it could release all that paradoxical energy at once." Webb rubbed his tired eyes. "Then what do we do?" Sarah had been thinking about that question for days. She had studied every piece of predecessor data, analyzed every symbol in the codex, and slowly, a terrible understanding had formed in her mind. "The predecessors didn't fight the engine," she said quietly. "They regulated it. They used their own consciousness, their own ability to exist outside linear time to keep the paradox contained. They became living governors of causality." "Became?" Webb looked at her sharply. "Past tense? They maintained the engine for billions of years. But eventually something went wrong. Maybe they lost focus. Maybe the strain was too much, or maybe the Devourers had programmed a trap they didn't see. Whatever happened, they failed. And when they failed, they were erased from the timeline, removed completely as if they never existed." Webb turned away from the window, processing this. "You're saying we need to do what they did. We need to merge with the engine somehow, use our consciousness to keep it stable?" "Yes, but not just one person. The predecessors were a single consciousness distributed across millions of bodies. They thought as one. Humans don't work that way. We're individuals. But if enough of us connected, shared our consciousness while maintaining our identities, we might be able to create a similar effect." "How many is enough?" Sarah looked at him. "All of us. Everyone on these ships. 10,000 human consciousnesses merged together, existing in all moments of time simultaneously, forever regulating the flow of causality." Webb sat down heavily. "That's not stopping the engine. That's sacrificing everyone here." "It's not death," Sarah said. "The predecessors still existed. They just existed outside time, experiencing every moment of the universe at once. They were aware, conscious, alive in a way we can't fully understand. Does it hurt? I don't know. The codex doesn't say." They stood in silence for a long moment. Outside the window, the engine pulsed with dark light, counting down to catastrophe. 23 hours remained. "I need to tell everyone," Webb said finally. "They deserve to know what this really means." 6 hours later, all 10,000 humans gathered in virtual space. Their holographic forms filled a vast digital chamber, floating in ranks like stars. Sarah stood at the center with Webb, Rodriguez, and the other fleet commanders. Webb explained everything. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to make it sound heroic. He told them the truth. To save the universe, they would need to give up individual existence and merge into something new. They would become the guardians of causality, existing outside time, experiencing every moment of the universe's lifespan simultaneously. When he finished, the silence was overwhelming. "I won't lie," Webb continued. "I'm terrified. The idea of existing in all moments at once, of feeling billions of years pass in a single instant, it's beyond anything we were meant to experience. But the alternative is worse. If we do nothing, everyone in the universe experiences something similar, but without choice and without the ability to maintain their identity. We would be volunteering for this. We would do it to save others. How do we know it will work?" someone asked. Sarah couldn't see who in the vast crowd. "We don't," Sarah admitted. "The predecessors succeeded for billions of years before they failed. We might fail too. But we're humanity's best chance. We're the people who volunteered to fly through broken time. We're the ones who made it here. If anyone can do this, it's us." The debate lasted for hours. Some people argued they should keep looking for alternatives. Others said they should at least try to fight the Guardians, attempt to damage the engine conventionally. But slowly a consensus formed. They had come too far to turn back. They had survived too much to fail now. The vote was taken. 9,700 people voted to attempt the merge. 300 voted against. It wasn't unanimous, but it was overwhelming. Rodriguez spoke to his military units. For those who voted no, you'll pilot the ships away from the Nexus before we begin. No one is forced into this. But I'm staying. I'm seeing this through. Lieutenant Park raised her hand. Sir, I'm staying too. We didn't come this far to run at the end. One by one, people who had voted against changed their minds. By the time the decision was final, only 50 people chose to leave. 48 of them were parents with young children, people Webb had convinced should survive to tell the story. 2 were crew members who had broken under the psychological strain and needed to return for medical care. A single small ship, the Messenger, prepared to depart with those 50 souls aboard. Everyone else stayed, 18 hours until activation. Sarah worked with the predecessor technology they had salvaged. The navigation crystals weren't just for finding paths through broken time. They were consciousness amplifiers. Designed to link minds together, she configured them to network all 47 ships into a single system. When we activate this, Sarah explained to the gathered captains, our consciousnesses will merge. We'll still be individuals, but we'll also be part of a greater whole. We'll need to enter the engine's core and interface directly with its mechanisms. Who leads us in? Captain Zhang asked. Everyone looked at Sarah. She was the one who had opened the vault. She was the one the predecessors had spoken to through the codex. Of course it would be her. I'll go, Sarah said, but I won't be alone. I'll need a small team to help me physically enter the engine while everyone else maintains the consciousness link from the ships. Rodriguez stepped forward. I'm coming, Webb nodded. So am I. Within an hour, they had a team of 50 people who would enter the engine directly. The rest would stay on the ships, their minds linked in the network, supporting the core team. 10 hours until activation. The Guardians woke up. Hundreds of them, their ancient programming recognizing that someone was approaching the engine. They swarmed toward the human fleet like angry insects. The battle began. 47 human ships against hundreds of Guardian constructs, fighting in space where time flowed in all directions at once. It was chaos. It was impossible. But the humans had learned to fight in broken causality. They moved like dancers in a hurricane, finding rhythm in the chaos. Ships took damage. The Newton lost its port side, atmosphere venting into space in slow-motion reverse. The Galileo was cut in half by a Guardian's beam weapon, but the two halves continued fighting independently, each section targeting enemies with desperate precision. People died. Sarah watched the casualty reports climbing. 50 dead, 100, 200. Each loss hurt, but they kept fighting. They had to hold the Guardians back long enough to reach the engine. Rodriguez commanded the defense from the Prometheus. His tactical mind, trained in normal warfare, had adapted to paradoxical combat. He anticipated attacks before they happened, positioned ships where they would need to be before the need arose. We're holding them, he reported, but we can't hold forever. Sarah, how much time do you need? 4 hours to reach the engine core. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. You'll have it. The small infiltration team launched in a single shuttle. Sarah sat in the pilot seat with Webb beside her. Behind them, 48 others prepared themselves mentally for what was coming. Through the shuttle's window, Sarah watched the battle rage around them. Human ships weaving between Guardian constructs. Weapons fire creating patterns of light in the darkness. They looked so small, so fragile, but they were holding the line. The shuttle approached the engine. Up close, it was even more massive than Sarah had imagined. Its surface was covered in symbols similar to those in the Codex, mathematics that described the structure of time itself. She found an opening, a massive port that seemed designed for entry. Here we go, she said, and guided the shuttle inside. The interior of the engine was impossible. They flew through corridors that existed in multiple times simultaneously. Sarah saw the passage ahead of them as it was, as it had been, and as it would be all at once. Her mind sorted through the chaos, finding the path forward. They reached the core chamber 3 hours before activation. The moment the Indomitable crossed into the dead zone, alarms started screaming. Maya gripped the helm controls as the ship shuddered. Red warning lights flashed across every console. The smooth hum of the engines changed to an angry grinding sound. Navigation computer just crashed, called out Ensign Park from the sensor station. Trying to reboot. It's not responding. Forget the reboot, Elena ordered. Switch to backup navigation. Marcus's voice came through the comm from engineering. Captain, the quantum drive is tearing itself apart. The containment field keeps fluctuating. These readings don't make sense. They don't have to make sense, Elena said calmly. Just keep us flying. Use whatever works. Through the view screen, the dead zone looked even worse from inside. Purple gases pressed against the hull like living things. Lightning jumped from cloud to cloud, sometimes striking toward the ship. The stars beyond twisted and bent in ways that hurt to look at. Maya pulled up the analog navigation display. An actual physical gyroscope mounted into her console, surrounded by mechanical dials. Switching to manual flight control. Computer assistance offline. Energy shields fluctuating between 30 and 90%, reported Lieutenant Sato from the weapons station. The pattern is random. No way to predict it. James stood behind Elena's chair, monitoring all stations at once. Life support is stable. Hull integrity holding at 96%. We're doing better than expected. Expected means lasting 3 minutes, Marcus said through the comm. We're at 5 minutes now. Already beating the record. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Let's see how much further we can push it. The ship bucked suddenly, throwing several crew members against their restraints. Maya's hands flew across the helm controls, fighting to keep them stable. Gravity well just appeared off the port side, Park shouted. It's pulling us in. I see it, Maya said through gritted teeth. She fired the atmospheric thrusters, small jets normally used only for planetary landings. The Indomitable groaned but slowly pulled away from the invisible gravitational trap. Good thinking, Elena said. The main engines would have been too powerful. We'd have overcorrected and crashed into something else. They flew deeper into the nebula. Every minute brought new problems. The quantum drive finally gave up completely, and Marcus switched to the backup fusion engines. They were slower but more reliable, old technology that humans had been using for centuries. The communications console sparked and went dark. Ensign Park tried to restart it 3 times before giving up. Captain, we've lost all quantum entanglement communications. We can't talk to Galactic Command anymore. Try the radio, Elena suggested. Park stared at her. The radio? Captain, that's ancient technology. It takes minutes for signals to travel even short distances, and it shouldn't work in this interference. Shouldn't and doesn't are different words. Try it. Park flipped switches that most communications officers never touched. The old radio transmitter powered up with a crackling sound. He adjusted the frequency, searching through static. Then his eyes widened. I'm getting something. It's the Kepler 7 station. They're very faint, but they're there. Tell them we're coming, Elena said, and that we're still alive. The message took 3 minutes to reach the station. 3 minutes later, a reply came back. The voice was broken and full of static, but the words were clear enough. Indomitable, we read you. We can't believe you made it this far. Godspeed. 12 minutes into the dead zone, they entered a field of derelict ships. Dead hulks floated in the purple gas, silent monuments to failed missions. Elena recognized designs from a dozen different species. Some of the wrecks looked ancient. Others might have been recent. Look at that one, James pointed to a massive dreadnought. That's a Centauri warship. Those things are built to survive direct hits from plasma cannons. The warship's hull was intact but dark. No power, no life signs. Just a floating tomb. Their mistake was trusting their automation, Marcus said, now on the bridge to monitor systems directly. When the AI crashed, their crew probably didn't know how to run the ship manually. We're lucky humans are too stubborn to fully trust machines. Maya carefully piloted between the wrecks. Each dead ship created its own small distortion in space. She had to feel her way through, using instinct more than instruments. Time distortion ahead, Park warned. Sensors say it's localized but intense. What kind of distortion? Elena asked. Time moves faster inside the field. A minute for us could be an hour in there. Can we go around? Maya studied her instruments. Not without adding 3 hours to our journey. And that's 3 hours we might not have. The ship is taking damage. Elena made the decision instantly. We go through. All hands brace for temporal distortion. The Indomitable entered the time field. Everything felt wrong immediately. Elena watched the clock on her console. The seconds ticked normally, but she felt like hours were passing. Her heart beat too slow. Her thoughts seemed to drag, then they were through. The sensation stopped. "Status report," Elena ordered. "Medical here," Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came through the comm. "Everyone on the ship just aged differently. Some crew members are reading as 3 hours older. Others only aged by seconds. But nobody is seriously harmed. Noted. Keep monitoring everyone's vitals." Marcus ran his hands through his hair, which had somehow grown longer during the passage. "Captain, we need to talk about the hull. The alien materials we used in the last refit aren't flexing right. The spatial distortions are causing microfractures. How bad? We'll hold together for maybe another hour at this rate. After that, we start having real problems," Elena thought quickly. "Can we replace the alien materials?" "With what? We don't have spare hull plating. We have internal walls, storage containers, equipment we don't absolutely need." Marcus's eyes lit up with understanding. "You want to patch the hull with spare parts from inside the ship. If it works on submarines in Earth's oceans, it can work here. Get your team on it. Strip anything that isn't essential. Use it to reinforce the weak points." For the next hour, the engineering team worked frantically. They pulled panels from crew quarters. They broke down storage lockers. They even removed decorative elements from the common areas. Everything went to reinforcing the hull. The patches looked terrible. Human steel welded over alien alloys. Mismatched materials held together with emergency sealant. Any engineer from another species would have been horrified, but it worked. The hull stopped developing new cracks. The ship continued to flex with the spatial distortions instead of fighting them. "We look like a garbage scow," James commented, viewing the external cameras. "We look like a ship that refuses to die," Elena corrected. Dr. Amira Patel, the science officer, had been running calculations throughout the crisis. Now she approached Elena with a tablet full of data. "Captain, I think I know why the dead zone kills ships." Elena gestured for her to continue. "It's not that the nebula destroys technology," Amira explained. "It's that the region has extreme quantum uncertainty. At a fundamental level, reality here refuses to be pinned down to exact measurements. Advanced AI systems need precise data to function. They can't handle contradictory information. When they encounter something that's both here and not here, both moving and stationary, they crash. But humans can handle contradictory information," Elena said, understanding. "Exactly. Our brains evolved to make decisions with incomplete data. We make intuitive leaps, we guess. We work with good enough instead of demanding perfect. That's our advantage here. So the more sophisticated the ship's systems, the more vulnerable it is. Right. The Indomitable is surviving because it's simple enough to be flexible. We're not smarter than the other species. We're just more comfortable with uncertainty." The ship shook again, this time more violently than before. Gravity shifted sideways for 3 seconds before stabilizing. "We're approaching the densest part of the nebula," Maya reported. "It's going to get much worse before it gets better." Elena activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. We've made it further than any ship in recorded history. We've proven the dead zone can be crossed, but the hardest part is still ahead. I need everyone to stay focused. Trust your training. Trust each other. And trust that human stubbornness beats impossible odds. We're going to make it because we're too dumb to know we shouldn't. Captain out." Nervous laughter echoed through the bridge. The tension broke slightly. The crew settled into their stations with renewed determination. "Time to destination?" Elena asked. "At current speed, 48 hours, Maya answered. "But that's if conditions don't get worse." "They will get worse," Park said quietly, staring at his sensors. "Captain, I'm reading massive spatial distortions ahead. The derelict field becomes much denser, and there's something else, something big." "Define big." Park's face went pale. "Ship graveyard, Captain. Hundreds of wrecks, maybe thousands, all clustered together. We have to fly through them to reach the other side." Through the view screen, Elena could now see what Park meant. The purple gases ahead were filled with dead ships. They overlapped each other, creating a maze of twisted metal and broken dreams. Lightning arced between the hulks, turning the whole field into a deadly obstacle course. "Well," James said softly. "Nobody said this would be easy." Elena stood from her chair. "Maya, I need you to do the impossible." The ship graveyard stretched before them like a metallic forest. Thousands of dead vessels drifted in the purple gas, creating shadows and reflections that played tricks on the eyes. Some ships were small, barely larger than shuttles. Others were massive colony vessels that could carry 1,000,000 people. All of them were silent. All of them were dark. Maya's hands moved constantly across the helm controls. She flew by instinct, trusting her gut more than the flickering instruments. The Indomitable weaved between wrecks, sometimes with only meters of clearance on either side. Hull stress increasing, Marcus reported. His voice was tight with concern. The patches are holding, but we're pushing our luck. Contact in 3 minutes at current course, Park added. There's a cluster of wrecks directly ahead. We can't go around them. Maya studied the obstacle. 6 ships had crashed into each other, creating a twisted mass of metal. The gap between them and the next set of wrecks was narrow. Very narrow. I need to roll the ship 90 degrees to fit through, Maya said. It's going to be tight. Do it, Elena ordered. The Indomitable rotated on its axis. The artificial gravity compensated so the crew felt nothing. But through the view screen, everyone could see the universe turning sideways. Maya threaded the ship through the gap with centimeters to spare on both sides. Lieutenant Sato wiped sweat from his forehead. I could have reached out and touched that wreck. But you didn't, Maya said calmly. That's what matters. They continued deeper into the graveyard. Each minute brought new challenges. Random gravity wells pulled at the ship. Energy discharges jumped between wrecks, forcing Maya to dodge like she was flying through a lightning storm. Time distortions made moments stretch or compress without warning. Then the life support system started failing. Red lights flashed on Marcus's console. Captain, we have a problem. The alien-designed air recyclers are going offline. They can't handle the quantum fluctuations. How long do we have? Elena asked. 6 hours at current consumption rate. Maybe 8 if we reduce activity to minimum. Elena activated shipwide comm. All non-essential personnel return to your quarters. Reduce physical activity. We need to conserve oxygen. James pulled up schematics on his tablet. The recyclers are too automated. They need constant computer monitoring to function. When the monitoring system gets confused by the dead zone's physics, the whole thing shuts down. What about the emergency backup systems? Elena asked. Those are automated too. Everything is. Modern ships don't carry manual life support anymore. Dr. Amira Patel had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. Captain, what if we don't use the modern systems at all? Explain. Old spacecraft used chemical CO2 scrubbers, lithium hydroxide canisters that physically absorb carbon dioxide. No computers needed. Just chemistry, Marcus nodded slowly. We have the chemicals in storage. They're considered obsolete, but regulations require us to carry them anyway. I never thought we'd actually use them. Can you set up a manual scrubbing system? Elena asked. It will be primitive. We'll need crew members to manually replace canisters every few hours. It will smell bad. The air quality won't be great, but we'll be able to breathe. Then make it happen. James organized rotation teams to handle the canisters. For the next 2 hours, the engineering team worked to bypass the automated life support and install manual chemical scrubbers. They used containers from the cargo bay, mixing lithium hydroxide with water by hand. It was messy, inefficient work that hadn't been done on spacecraft for 200 years, but it worked. The CO2 level stabilized. The crew could breathe. The cost was constant labor. Every 3 hours, teams had to replace the used canisters with fresh ones. It was exhausting work on top of everything else the crew was dealing with. But nobody complained. They understood the alternative was suffocation. Maya continued flying through the graveyard. She had been at the helm for 12 hours straight. Her eyes were red from fatigue and her hands trembled slightly from the constant strain. Maya, let someone else take over, Elena said gently. No one else can do this, Captain. I'm not being arrogant. I'm stating fact. These flying conditions require instincts that only come from thousands of hours of emergency piloting. Most of our pilots trained in simulators with AI assistance. I trained in actual ships with actual problems. Elena knew she was right. Maya was the best pilot in the fleet, maybe the best pilot humanity had. Then take stims if you need them. But the moment you feel your judgment slipping, you tell me. Aye, Captain. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived on the bridge with medical supplies. She administered a mild stimulant to Maya, something to keep her alert without impacting her coordination. It would buy them another 8 hours before Maya would need real rest. The ship pushed deeper into the graveyard. They passed a wreck that Elena recognized from historical records, the Ascending Dream, a collective vessel that had disappeared 300 years ago. The ship that had carried Counselor Mira's ancestor. They came so close, Amira said softly, studying the wreck's position. Another few kilometers and they would have cleared the worst of it. Close doesn't matter here, James said. Only success or failure. The Indomitable shuddered. Then shuddered again. The pattern continued, a rhythmic shaking that grew stronger with each repetition. What is that? Elena demanded. Park frantically checked his instruments. It's a resonance effect. Something about our engine frequency is interacting with the spatial distortions. Each vibration is feeding the next one. If it continues, it will shake the ship apart. Marcus was already working on the problem. Changing engine frequency. Trying to break the resonance. The shaking grew worse. Tools fell from storage compartments. Crew members grabbed their stations to stay upright. A welded hull patch split open, venting atmosphere before emergency systems sealed it. Engine frequency change not working. Marcus shouted over the noise. The resonance is adapting to match whatever we do. Elena made a decision. Kill the engines. All of them. Right now. Captain, if we stop, we'll drift, James protested. We might crash into a wreck, and if we don't stop, we'll vibrate apart. Do it now! The engines went silent. The Indomitable coasted forward on momentum alone. Drifting through the graveyard without power. The shaking stopped immediately. They floated in eerie silence. The only sounds were the breathing of the crew and the occasional creak of the hull adjusting to stress. Maya's hands hovered over the helm controls, ready to fire maneuvering thrusters if they drifted toward a wreck. Her eyes tracked every piece of debris around them, calculating trajectories in her head. We're going to pass close to that freighter, she said quietly, pointing to a large wreck ahead. But we'll clear it. Barely. The Indomitable drifted past the dead freighter with meters to spare. They continued coasting for 5 minutes before the resonance effect dissipated. Engines back online, Marcus reported, but gently this time. Minimal power. They continued forward at a crawl. It was safer but much slower. Their oxygen situation became critical again. Captain, at this speed we won't clear the graveyard before we run out of breathable air, James said, showing her his calculations. We either speed up and risk the resonance effect or we maintain speed and suffocate. Elena stared at the view screen, thinking. The graveyard was thinning ahead. They were close to getting through. So close, there's a third option, she said. We reduce crew oxygen consumption even more. Put everyone not essential into emergency hibernation. Dr. Sarah Chen shook her head. Captain, emergency hibernation is designed for controlled conditions. Using it here with all these quantum fluctuations affecting biology could be fatal. Could be is better than will be. How many people do we absolutely need awake to run the ship? They did the math. Pilot, captain, first officer, chief engineer, 1 sensor operator, 1 medical officer. 6 people could run the ship at minimum functionality. That's insane, Dr. Chen said. You're talking about putting 194 people to sleep in the middle of the dead zone. And that's 194 people who won't be consuming oxygen we don't have. Elena replied. Doctor, I need your professional opinion. Can it work? Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. It can work. The survival rate won't be 100%. We'll probably lose some people, but it's better odds than everyone dying from oxygen deprivation. Elena activated ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. We're implementing Emergency Protocol 7. All non-essential personnel will enter hibernation to conserve resources. This was not how I planned to get us through the dead zone, but plans change. You trusted me to get you here. Trust me to get you home. The crew moved efficiently. They had trained for this scenario, though no one expected to actually use it. One by one, crew members entered hibernation pods. The ship's medical computer administered the drugs that would slow their breathing and heart rate to almost nothing. Within 2 hours, only 6 people remained awake on the Indomitable. The ship felt like a tomb. Empty corridors. Silent stations. Just 6 humans keeping the vessel alive through the worst conditions imaginable. Maya sat at her helm station, more alone than she had ever felt. This is eerie, Captain. Stay focused. We're almost through. They flew in silence for hours. The 6 of them worked constantly. Monitoring systems, adjusting course, replacing air scrubber canisters, making repairs. 8 hours later, Maya saw something that shouldn't exist. Through the view screen, the purple gases of the dead zone began to twist into patterns. Not random patterns, deliberate ones. Geometric shapes that hurt to look at. Angles that existed in more than 3 dimensions. "Captain, you need to see this," Maya said quietly. Elena had been in the captain's quarters, taking a brief rest while James watched the bridge. She returned immediately. When she saw the view screen, she stopped cold. "What am I looking at?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "The sensors can't make sense of it. My eyes can't make sense of it. But it's there, and it's getting stronger." The geometric patterns grew more complex. They folded in on themselves, creating impossible structures that seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously. Looking at them made Elena's head ache. "Amira, theories?" Elena asked. The science officer had been staring at the phenomenon for 5 minutes, her tablet forgotten in her hands. "It's a region where space itself has broken down. Not just quantum uncertainty anymore. This is fundamental reality failure. The universe can't decide what should exist here. So everything exists. And nothing exists, both at the same time. Can we fly through it? I genuinely don't know. The math says we should be torn apart. But the math also said we should have died at the edge of the dead zone." Marcus joined them on the bridge, leaving the engineering station on automatic monitoring. "I've seen weird things in the last 2 days, but that takes the prize." "How do we handle it?" "Very carefully," Elena said. "Maya, slow to minimum speed. I want maximum time to react to problems." The Indomitable crept forward. As they entered the region of broken reality, things became stranger. Through the view screen, crew members saw multiple versions of the same stars. They saw their ship's reflection, but the reflection moved differently than they did. They saw colors that had no names. Then they started seeing people who weren't there. James looked up from his console and saw his father standing next to him. His father had been dead for 10 years. James blinked and the image was gone. Maya saw her daughter running across the bridge laughing. But her daughter was safe back on Earth, thousands of light years away. The image flickered and vanished. Elena saw herself standing at her own console, watching herself. The other version of her smiled and waved, then disappeared. "Time distortions," Amira said, her voice shaking. "We're seeing echoes of past and future, or alternate possibilities, or something else entirely. The human brain isn't designed to process this." "Nobody look at the view screen," Elena ordered. "Focus on your instruments." "Marcus, how are the ship systems handling this?" "Surprisingly well. The analog instruments don't care that reality is broken. They just measure what they measure. The gyroscopes spin. The pressure gauges read pressure. Simple physics still works, even if complex physics has given up." They flew through the impossible region for what felt like hours but might have been minutes. Time had lost meaning. Elena checked her watch 3 times and got 3 different readings. She stopped checking after that. The hardest part was maintaining focus. The hallucinations grew stronger. Crew members heard voices of loved ones. They saw memories playing out in the empty air. Some of the visions were comforting. Others were nightmares. Maya gripped the helm control so hard her knuckles turned white. She flew by pure instinct, trusting her hands to do what her confused mind couldn't process. The ship responded smoothly, following her commands even as the universe twisted around them. Then, gradually, the impossible geometry began to fade. The hallucinations decreased. Reality started following rules again. The purple gases returned to being just gases instead of living, thinking things. "We're through," Amira said, disbelief in her voice. "We actually flew through the worst region of the dead zone and came out the other side." Elena checked her console. The readings were starting to make sense again. They were still in the dead zone, but approaching the far edge. The quantum uncertainty was decreasing with every kilometer. "Status report," Elena said, her voice hoarse from tension. "Hull integrity at 73%, Marcus reported. "We're holding together, but barely. Engine efficiency is down to 60%. Life support is functional on manual mode. We look like hell, but we're alive. Maya." The pilot's hands were shaking now that the immediate crisis had passed. "I'm okay, Captain. Just need a minute. That was the hardest flying I've ever done." "You did brilliantly. Take a break. James, you have the helm." James moved to the pilot station while Maya stood on trembling legs. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been monitoring medical readings the whole time, gave Maya a sedative to help her rest. The pilot needed sleep, but they were now through the worst of it. James could handle the remaining journey. 4 hours later, the Indomitable crossed the boundary of the dead zone. The purple gases thinned and then disappeared. Normal space surrounded them. Stars looked like stars again. Physics followed familiar rules. We made it, Marcus said simply. We actually made it. Elena activated the radio transmitter. Kepler 7 station, this is the Indomitable. Do you read? Static for a moment. Then a voice came through, crystal clear now that they were out of the dead zone. Indomitable, this is Kepler 7. We read you. We can't believe you're real. The Galactic Council told us you were dead. We're very much alive. We have your medical supplies. ETA 34 hours. Indomitable, you just did the impossible. The entire station is watching your approach. You're heroes. Elena smiled tiredly. We're just stubborn.
Indomitable out. She activated ship-wide comm to wake the hibernating crew.
All hands, this is the captain. We have crossed the dead zone. We are through. Begin revival procedures. The hibernation pods opened one by one. Crew members woke slowly, groggy from the drugs. Some of them had complications. Minor brain damage from the quantum fluctuations, or organs that had aged unevenly during time distortions. Dr. Chen and her medical team worked frantically to stabilize everyone. Out of 194 crew members in hibernation, 189 woke up successfully. 5 did not survive the process. The quantum fluctuations had been too much for their biology to handle, even in suspended animation. Elena read the names of the dead. Ensign Maria Rodriguez, Lieutenant Tom Nakamura, Engineer First Class Jennifer Okoye, Medical Technician David Park, Cook Second Class Sarah Thompson. 5 people who had volunteered for an impossible mission. 5 people who would never see their families again. 5 people who died so that 50,000 others could live. Elena recorded their names in the ship's log. She would personally write to their families. But that would come later. Right now, she had a mission to complete. The 34-hour journey to Kepler 7 passed quietly. The crew worked to repair systems, though much of the damage would require proper shipyard facilities. The Indomitable would need months of work before it could fly again. But it could make it to the station. That was enough. They also received communications from outside the dead zone. The Galactic Council had been trying to contact them for 2 days. When the Indomitable's signal appeared on the far side of the nebula, the Council thought their instruments were malfunctioning. Admiral Krelvoth's face appeared on the view screen, his scales rippling with emotions humans couldn't translate.
Captain Vasquez, we
believed you were lost. No ship has ever crossed the dead zone. No ship had ever crossed it, Elena corrected. Past tense. We're rewriting the history books. How? We have been analyzing your telemetry. Your ship should have failed within minutes. The statistical probability of survival was meaningless, Elena interrupted. Statistics tell you what happened before. They don't tell you what's possible. Humans have a talent for doing things that the numbers say we shouldn't be able to do. The Council wanted a full report. Elena promised to provide one after they completed their mission. The cure came first. Analysis could wait. Kepler 7 station appeared on their sensors. It was a massive research facility, home to 50,000 beings from 30 different species. They studied exotic phenomena at the edge of the galaxy. Normally, supply ships visited every few months, but the plague outbreak had isolated them, and the dead zone made rescue impossible, until now. The station's docking control guided them in. Every available viewport was filled with watchers. Thousands of beings watched the battered human ship approach. They saw the patched hull, the mismatched repairs, the scars of impossible combat. They saw a ship that refused to die. Maya had returned to the helm, insisting she be the one to dock them. I brought us through the dead zone. I'm going to finish the job. She brought the Indomitable in perfectly, matching rotation and velocity with practiced ease. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk. Airlocks connected. Seals confirmed. We have docking, Maya announced. Mission complete. The bridge erupted in cheers. Crew members hugged each other. Some cried. Others laughed. They had done the impossible. They had crossed the dead zone and lived to tell about it. Elena stood and straightened her uniform. Medical team prepare to transfer the cure. Everyone else stand by for station greeting protocols. The airlock opened. Elena stepped through into Kepler 7 station, carrying the sealed container of medical supplies. A crowd waited on the other side, doctors, researchers, families. The Indomitable stayed docked at Kepler 7 station for 8 days. The crew needed rest and the ship needed repairs that could only be done in a proper facility. The station's engineers studied the human modifications with fascination. "This is chaos," one ascended collective engineer said, examining a hull patch. "You welded storage containers to the outer hull. This violates every standard engineering protocol." Marcus grinned. "It also kept us alive. Sometimes chaos beats order." The engineers documented everything. Every improvised repair, every manual override, every primitive backup system. The human approach to the dead zone became required reading for anyone studying extreme environment survival. On the third day, Elena received a communication from Galactic Command. Admiral Krelvoth appeared on the screen, but he wasn't alone. The entire Galactic Council stood behind him. "Captain Vasquez, the Council requests your presence to give testimony about your crossing. We are dispatching a fast ship to transport you. It will arrive in 4 days." Elena nodded. "Understood, Admiral. I'll prepare my report. Captain, one more thing. The Council has voted unanimously to award you and your crew the Star of Unity, the highest civilian honor in the galaxy. It has been given only 12 times in 3,000 years. Elena felt a lump in her throat. "Admiral, we were just doing our job. You did far more than your job. You changed what we thought was possible. The dead zone was considered impassable. You made it a crossing route. That changes everything." The fast ship arrived on schedule. It was a sleek diplomatic vessel from the Ascended Collective, capable of speeds the Indomitable could never match. Elena selected James, Marcus, Maya, and Amira to accompany her. The rest of the crew would remain with their ship. The journey to the Council homeworld took 6 days. Elena spent that time preparing her full report. She documented every decision, every problem, every solution. She was honest about their losses. 5 crew members who didn't survive hibernation. The Council needed to know the true cost. When they arrived at the Council homeworld, a formal delegation met them at the spaceport. Hundreds of reporters from dozens of species crowded the arrival area. The humans had become celebrities across the galaxy. "Captain Vasquez, how did you survive the dead zone? What makes humans different from other species? Will you attempt the crossing again?" Elena smiled politely but said nothing. The Council had requested her testimony first. The media could wait. The Council chamber was massive, built to accommodate representatives from 50 different species. Some needed water environments. Others required high gravity or specific atmospheric conditions. The chamber provided for all of them. Elena and her crew stood in the center of the room. 50 pairs of eyes, some human-like, others completely alien, watched them with intense interest. Admiral Krelvoth spoke first. "Captain Vasquez, please describe how you crossed the Talon Nebula, known as the Dead Zone." Elena took a deep breath and began. She explained their preparation, the focus on redundancy and manual systems. She described the crossing itself, each crisis they faced and how they solved it. She talked about the graveyard of ships, the impossible geometry, the reality distortions. She spoke for 2 hours. The Council listened in silence. When she finished, Counselor Mira asked the question everyone was thinking. "Captain, we have analyzed your ship's specifications. By every metric, the Indomitable should have failed within minutes of entering the dead zone. Your technology is not more advanced than ours. Your ship is not stronger, yet you survived where hundreds of superior vessels did not. Please explain this contradiction." Elena looked at her crew. They nodded encouragement. "Counselor, you're right that our technology isn't more advanced. In many ways, it's more primitive. But that was our advantage. The dead zone doesn't destroy ships, it destroys complexity. When quantum uncertainty peaks, sophisticated AI systems crash, automated processes fail. Technology that requires perfect information becomes useless." She gestured to Marcus. "Our chief engineer kept us running with spare parts and improvisation. We used techniques that haven't been standard for centuries. We welded storage containers to our hull because we ran out of proper materials. It looked terrible, but it worked." Maya stepped forward. "I flew the ship manually through conditions where computers couldn't function. I made decisions based on gut feeling and experience, not calculations. Other species train pilots to trust their instruments. Humans train pilots to trust themselves when instruments fail," Amira added. The dead zone revealed a fundamental truth. Advanced intelligence isn't the same as adaptability. Your species have optimized for efficiency and perfection. You've forgotten how to function when conditions are imperfect. Humans never forgot because Earth forced us to remember. A Zentari counselor spoke, his voice like grinding stone. Are you saying our advancement made us weak? Not weak, Elena said carefully. Specialized. Your technology is amazing in normal conditions, but the dead zone isn't normal. It punishes specialization and rewards adaptability. Humans are generalists by nature. We're comfortable with uncertainty. We make decisions with incomplete information. We improvise when plans fail. Those aren't advanced traits. They're survival traits. The council chamber buzzed with conversation. Some representatives looked offended. Others looked thoughtful. A few looked excited. Admiral Krelvoth raised a hand for silence. Captain Vasquez, will you share your crossing techniques with other species? Your route through the dead zone could revolutionize galactic travel. Of course, Admiral. But I need to be clear about something. Our techniques work for humans. They might not work for species that think differently. You can't just copy our methods. You need to understand why they work. Explain, Counselor Mira said. Humans succeed in chaos because our evolution prepared us for it. Earth was a difficult planet. Unpredictable weather, dangerous predators, limited resources. We survived by being flexible, creative, and stubborn. Other species evolved in different conditions. Some had stable environments. Others had abundant resources. Your evolution shaped you differently than ours shaped us. Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. If you want to cross the dead zone, you need to learn to think like humans. That means accepting imperfection, using simple tools when complex ones fail, trusting intuition when logic becomes contradictory, making decisions without complete information. Some species might find that difficult or impossible. A representative from a machine intelligence collective spoke, their voice synthesized. Our species exists as pure thought and computational substrates. We cannot function without precise data. The dead zone would destroy us completely. Are you saying we can never cross it? I'm saying you would need to fundamentally change how you operate. You would need biological or mechanical bodies that can function independently. You would need to learn to make decisions based on probability instead of certainty. It might not be possible for your species, but that's okay. Different species have different strengths. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to immediately begin dead zone crossing attempts using human methods. Others argued for more research first. A few insisted the dead zone should remain off limits regardless of human success. Finally, Admiral Krelvoth called for order. The council has reached several decisions. First, Captain Vasquez and her crew will receive the Star of Unity, as previously announced. Second, the Talon Nebula will be redesignated from Dead Zone to Vasquez Passage in honor of this historic crossing. Third, the Council will fund a joint research program to study human survival techniques and adapt them for other species. He turned to Elena directly. Captain, we are also authorizing a new mission. You will return through the Vasquez Passage to the regular side of the galaxy. Your crossing will be monitored and documented. Other species will observe and learn. If successful, regular crossing routes will be established. Elena felt her stomach tighten. They wanted her to cross the dead zone again. Admiral, the Indomitable needs extensive repairs first. Months of work. You will have whatever time and resources you need. But Captain, you understand why this matters. If the dead zone can be crossed regularly, it opens up entirely new regions of the galaxy. Research stations like Kepler-7 won't be isolated anymore. We can explore areas that have been unreachable for millennia. Elena looked at her crew. What do you think? We did it once, Marcus said. We can do it again. And this time we'll know what to expect. Maya nodded. I'm in. Besides, someone needs to map the safe routes. James grinned. Can't let other ships have all the glory. Amira smiled. For science, Elena turned back to the council. We accept the mission, Admiral. But on one condition. Any species that wants to attempt the crossing must send representatives to train with our crew first. We'll teach them everything we know, but they need to understand. This isn't about having better ships or smarter computers. It's about being willing to trust yourself when everything else fails. The council agreed. Over the next 3 months, representatives from 15 species came to study with the Indomitable's crew. The humans taught them manual navigation, improvised engineering, decision-making under uncertainty. Some students excelled. Others struggled with concepts that went against their cultural conditioning. The Indomitable received complete repairs and upgrades.